Everyone. Now, I'm going to explain that interesting start. Today, we have an amazing guest. And normally start with introducing the show, but it's Red Boswell. And if anyone has ever seen Red's profile picture, he's jumping in the air. I'm going to ask him about that later. But I thought I would try and replicate that. I'm now out of breath. But it's fantastic to have you here, Red. As you can see, Red is in his, I'm guessing, a Jeep, something like that. He is mobile at the moment, so all is good at the moment. But if it cuts out, you'll have to put up with me banging on for a bit. Anyway, we'll go back to normal now. Where do we always start? We always start by introducing what the idea of the franchise show is. And the idea is to bring value to the franchise community, to bring people together, lift one another up, share our stories, inspire thought as well. It's not necessarily about, in fact, it's not about advice. It's about the questions you might ask. And in sharing our experiences, we definitely find those questions. So it's always a community feel. It's all about everybody here, what experiences people have, and sharing your thoughts and questions. So we very much encourage you to do that where you can. So the topic, each week we have a new topic. And this week, the topic is jumping into franchising. Partly a play on Red's lovely profile picture, but also a more important, that is a very cool Jeep, by the way, Red. Very cool, my friend, very cool. But one of the important things when you're thinking about your decisions within franchising, whether you're a franchisor, a franchisee, an entrepreneur, is asking the right questions, and doing your due diligence and not jumping into franchising. So that's going to be a great conversation that we're going to have today with all of you and with Red. And without further ado, I'd really like to introduce the wonderful Red Boswell to you all. Red is the president of the IFPG, the Franchise Wire. He's an advisory board member for the Titus Academy, and we're having them on the show later this year. And he's been helping over 250 franchisors throughout his journey. So, Red, welcome to the Franchise Show. Perhaps you'd like to just explain a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be such a wonderful character in franchising.
A wonderful character. I'll put that on my LinkedIn. Thanks, Harvey. It's good to be on here, brother. And yeah, I'm on the side of the road here, guys. We, in the U.S., I'm in Texas, good old Texas. In fact, my Texas license plate, franchise, boom, come and take it. That's a little Texas phrase from Goliad and the Alamo. Anyway, we've got daylight savings time, and it's we bump, spring forward, fall back, and here we are sprung forward. You guys have not sprung forward yet,
and so we're a bit late to spring forward here.
So I've got a flight to the multi-unit franchise conference in Vegas here in a couple 3 hours, and so I'm on the road to the airport, and I just it's a good drive, so I had to stop on the side of the road, find a relatively quiet place, and have some fun with you, my brother. So hey, and by the way, I wore my selfie-less. Lord help me if I'm I hope I'm selfless, but we know I'm not selfie-less, right?
That's very good. Well, can I promote my T-shirt? What's on mine? It's Fleetwood Mac on mine. Classic band as well. So big up Fleetwood Mac. I'm not promoting them. Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for that introduction, Red. Before we start getting into the topic of jumping into franchising and people's decision-making process, let's just recognize a few people have joined us very early on today. We have got the wonderful and ever wise Simon Wise. He loves that joke. Great to have you here, Simon. Really looking forward to hearing your thoughts about that decision-making process. Whether you're a franchisor, trying to make a decision for the right partner for you, whether you're a franchisee thinking, where should I invest? Or even whether you're an entrepreneur thinking, is franchising the right business model for growth in my business? It's just going to be great to hear everyone's thoughts. Simon is a franchise recruitment specialist in terms of getting your staff and your people into your business here in the UK. So reach out to Simon if you need that. And he's my wonderful business partner in a new show coming up on Thursday. So that's going to be fantastic. And I will promote it, I'm sure, later on. So we've also got John here. John, great to see you. And John thinks you look like Keith Lemon. So that's lovely. Do you know Keith Lemon? Red?
No, remind me.
You have to do some Googling. He's a little famous here, but he's a lovely chap, very funny as well. So, we have Danny here. Danny has written a lovely book, and here it is. I'm going to promote it. And look, I've managed to get things the right way around. Penny is going to be delighted about that, and Penny's coming up soon as well. So, in fact, let's put Penny's comment up here. Penny's put, "Hello, Harvey and Red and everyone." And Penny is the sponsor of the show. And here, Penny, look, I've reversed it round. It's the right way round for you. So that's her book, all about franchise operations and knowledge sharing. So it's fantastic. So let's have a look who else we've got. We've got Jitten here today. Jitten, lovely chap, been on the show, was a franchisee, aged just 22. We've just got somebody who said, hello, LinkedIn user. Let me know who you are and I'll recognize you for being here. That would be great. And finally, we have the lovely Natalia. Natalia is an expert on contracts and agreements and does a lovely podcast called Fran Chat with two other lovely people. So look, there we go. A wonderful community recognized. So before we get into some questions, how did you get into franchising, Red?
Harvey, I'll try to keep it short. Always been very entrepreneurial since grade school. Just love the challenge, the adventure. I have a marketing degree from the university. I have an MBA from the Titus Center at Franchising in West Palm. But all my life, I've had that entrepreneurial spirit and love a challenge. And so I really take it back to when I was 21, which of course was just a few years ago. I got recruited into Amway. I don't know if you know that, but Amway back in the day just about took over the world. Well, it's all about helping people achieve their dreams through business ownership and associating with the right people, listening to the right information, reading the right books. And so that success principles at its core really just took heart in me, and I've never looked back. And so although I never changed the world with the Amway folks, it did change me. And so a few years later, having started another dozen plus businesses, I had one that actually didn't fail, and I did all right. I worked my tail off every day for 10 years, took one vacation, and that was my honeymoon, but it didn't die. So I had something worth selling. I tried to sell it, brought on a business broker, and he said, you've got the systems, the processes, you got incredible margins. Let's take this national. Well, neither one of us knew really what that meant or how to do it. So I set upon learning about licensing, getting loans, maybe getting investors, and this crazy thing called franchising. And man, that was it. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like Amway on steroids. This is much more consumer protection, at least in the States and in Canada. North America is very consumer protection oriented as it relates to the franchise world. It's frankly a little over the top, but it's much more structured, much more regulated, and yet the sky's the limit. Opportunities galore. Entrepreneurship is in so many people's blood. They want freedom. They want opportunity. They're tired of all the limits and the restrictions and the prejudices and all the things that get in the way of us achieving our dreams, right? So I just fell in love with franchising. I got introduced to it. I had a home services, business services business that I franchised, and in about 3.5 years launched 148 units in 28 states. sold that. Franchisee still going strong today, and then that was back 14 years ago, and have since 15 years ago maybe. Have since just been helping folks in franchising in pretty much every capacity. Been a franchisee, was of course a franchisor for 6 or 7 years, and now for the last best 5 years of my life, I've been able to work with the largest and build the largest franchise consulting and broker group in the world. We work with 650 franchisors, a similar number of franchise consultants or referral consultants, and another 120 vendors. So about 1,500 folks in franchising, changing lives, impacting communities, and just having a blast doing it.
Fantastic. That was a fantastic introduction to how you got into the world of franchising. It's often I hear people's stories as to how that happens, and sometimes it's by accident, and it's often taking those opportunities as they arise and looking at different ways of expanding your business and your horizons. So fantastic to hear that. Let's just recognize quickly a few more people that have joined us. We've got Penny, and she said, thank you. I assume that's because we got the book the right way round, which we normally don't. So that's fantastic to have you here, Penny. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We've got Johnny Joseph here, and I don't know if you know Johnny, Red, but Johnny does franchise audits there in the US. So he was on, I think, last week, actually. So it was great to hear about how that process happens. So anyone who's looking for that, reach out to lovely Johnny. We've got Jake Stratton here from Fran Connect. Great to have you here, Jake. Thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your stories and your questions about how to not jump into franchising. I'm still recovering from doing that jump at the beginning, to be honest. We've got Neil here. Great to have you here. I'm going to be having a conversation, and I have got your message, Neil, so I will give you a message back soon, but great to have you here. We've got Fernando, from Colombia. Look, we're all the way around the world here, so that's fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And we've got the lovely Joe Caruso. I'm sure, Red, that you know Joe Caruso. And I'm sure Joe knows you. So I'll look at that. Do people physically jump, or can they hop into franchising? Well, I'm not doing any hopping now, because that's my exercising done, that jump. Great to have you here, Joe, all as ever, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And always tune into Joe's franchising audio that he does on a Friday. I'm a big fan. So, great. We've got Don Cohen. Don Cohen is the person who taught me everything about LinkedIn Live. So if you like what I do, check out Don Cohen. He's a lovely chap, great friend of mine, and it's always good to see him here. Let's have a look. We've got 3 more here. Right, I'm going to leave these because I want to come back to these, because we've got some great questions. So in fact, let's start with John's question here. And John's put, if you were to outline the top 3 pieces of advice for a franchisee recruiter, what would they be? So this, I think what John's talking about in terms of franchise recruitment is getting new franchisees on board, but correct me if that's not what you're.
Yeah. So how to be a better franchise recruiter, overall advice. Number 1, get a great brand. That is a hard job. It's a great job if you're going to have a job, and the sky's the limit. And I see some wonderful recruiters with sucky brands, and find an awesome brand, man. You're going to spend so much of your life doing it, and that extends to everybody on the call and in the world. Find something you enjoy. You don't have to totally love it necessarily, but at least it allows you to achieve what you do love and live the life and have the work-life harmony you're desiring. But get a great brand. Okay, number 1. Number 2, and these are all on the spot, guys. Have a process. So many salespeople, because let's be honest, you're awarding franchises, you're a franchise, you're a sales guy, you're a sales gal. That's awesome. Most people in the world are and don't even know it, at least if they're going to succeed. And so have a solid, defined process, which you communicate on every call. Book the next call during this call. Have it visual that you can share on every call about your process, where you're at, where you're going, where you've come from, the time frame associated, confirm with the candidate again the time frame. I think I've just done 5, but when you're in franchise development, you're so critical to changing a life. Franchisors change lives, but the front line, nothing happens until somebody's sold. The front line is the franchise development person. They're the most critical person in any franchise organization, in my opinion, because nothing happens without them, and they're bringing on the lifeblood of the organization. So do your job with integrity, do it with clarity, and have fun at the same time.
I think that's great advice. I love that advice. I particularly love when you were talking about finding your passion or something that you love, because a lot of things can be taught, and in franchising you get a lot of tools given to you to use to enable you to sort of go along that journey. But passion, the interest, that desire for a particular industry or area, that kind of comes from within. So I love that. I think that's great. Great advice there, and thanks so much for your question, John. These questions really do drive the show, and Red is fantastically positioned to answer those. I wanted to ask you a question, Red. This is one from me. I get to ask a question every now and again. It's just the way it goes, you see. My question to you is, I've got to ask, because otherwise I'm just going to be intrigued. What was the situation that led up to your profile picture of you jumping in the air?
Well, okay, every year we have retreat, IFPG retreat. That is the largest event in the world for franchisors, suppliers, and franchise consultants. Now, I'll pause that thought for a moment. Franchise consultant could also be called a franchise broker, franchise consultant, franchise advisor, franchise matchmaker, franchise coach. Okay, those are the 5 most popular terms associated with what we do. An expansion on that might be referral consultant. We are, IFPG is the world's largest referral consultant network or organization. And so each year we've got 7 regional events all around the country with over 100 of our members, and we've got a virtual event in the spring coming up soon. But the biggest event in the world of franchise consulting is Retreat. It happens in Hollywood, Florida, which is South Florida near Miami and Fort Lauderdale. It happens around the October timeframe in the fall. This year it's October 30 to October 2nd. But I'm night 1, we have a big mixer, and then an after party mixer, and then an after party mixer, and we go to the deepness of the night, right? Well, it's Florida, man. We get outside, we're around the pool, we're in this huge deck area, we've got a band, we've got dancing, always open bar, top shelf, and just having a great party connecting franchise professionals. Well, I'm not shy to the selfie world, or as I like to call it, groupie. And so I'm doing a groupie picture and video up on top of a 4-foot high potted plant or potted tree out on this big open area. And I turn around, I see the camera guy right there. So I guess I just hammed it up, got a little energy, and just said, "Let's go." And I jumped off, like did my best David Lee Roth from Van Halen, and he caught it just perfect. So it wasn't planned, but it worked out well.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We've got a few other questions which are really relevant and interesting. So I thought you jumped in the air again then. You okay?
I just dropped my phone here.
He can't help himself. We're going to bring up a question here by Simon, which I think is a good. Oh, there we go. Let's do that again. We're going to bring up a question by Simon because I think it related quite well to what you were just saying there, actually. And he's put, when do you think franchise brokers are going to gain traction in the UK market, Red? It's interesting. I don't know if you know, Red, but in the UK, we don't really have a brokerage system in that way. You know, we have consultants.
Yeah.
They rely on the leads coming in from the franchise companies.
Sure. It'll gain traction as soon as Simon becomes one. So, I mean, in North America, franchise consultants are the #1 source of awarded franchises outside of organic leads. And so we're seeing baby steps, trickles as we cross the pond more and more. As more franchisors, it's that circle of success. As more franchisors use us and expand across the pond, they're going to expect to have the same type of relationship for their marketing and their franchise development efforts, lead generation, which is, hey, let's work with awesome consultants. Now, IFPG, the I in IFPG is international. And so we do have consultants internationally, but it's just a sprinkling. I mean, we've got one in Dubai, I believe a couple in India, got some in South America. We have a ton in the US that do international deals, but ultimately it is still a very, very fledgling industry internationally outside of North America. And frankly, I'll tell you, I think we're still fledgling in the US and Canada. I mean, we're the number one source of awarded franchises, and we don't even do 20% of all the deals out there. So it's the sky's the limit on where we're going internationally and domestically.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And it's such a good resource to have for an emerging and established brand. So it's great to hear how it was working there and hopefully how it might come here.
Harvey, that brings up a good topic, and I'll hit this because so often folks ask, or I'll hear some folks say, hey, if you're an emerging brand, you should work with brokers, or if you're an established brand, you should work with brokers. I hear advice all over the place to folks, and I pulled some reports recently about our franchisors and the numbers. A third of all the Zors we work with, a third have 24 or less units. So tons of emerging. We're talking over 200 brands that have less than 24. Another third have 118, so 24 to 118. 24 units to 118 units, that's a third. And then the last third is over 118 units. So that's a huge spread. In fact, 9% of them are over 500 units. So whether you're emerging or a very established legacy brand, consultants or franchise brokers will provide the lowest financial risk for your franchise development efforts with the highest return, because they get closed faster. They tend to be a much better franchisee who's better qualified, a better fit, better financially astute because of the training and the guidance they've had from a consultant. So sorry for that pitch. I just love what we do, and I know wholeheartedly that we change lives for franchisors and for their franchisees. So I'm passionate about it, and I get frustrated when I hear folks give advice that's just not right. You should only work with consultants if you're big. You should only work with consultants if you're small. No, if you want to have great leads, you should work with consultants.
Sure. No, I never mind a blatant self-promotion, Red. You know this.
And I didn't even mention our company name. I'm talking about the industry as a whole.
That's really good coffee, by the way. I always do that, you see. It's a little joke we have. Anyway, look, that's great, fantastic. We've got a few other questions that have come up here, and thanks for explaining that, because it's really interesting, especially for an international market, to see truly where the brokerage fits in and what value it can add. So thanks so much for answering that so concisely. Just very quickly before we get on to these next questions, if you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show. We are talking with the wonderful Red Boswell, and we are talking about jumping or not into franchising and everything that could happen during that early decision-making process. So we've got a question here from John. Another question. What does Red consider to be the biggest threat to the franchising industry? And also, what does he believe the biggest misconception about the franchising industry is? Let's deal with those one at a time. Do you think that there's anything that's threatening the industry, Red?
Oh boy, interesting question. Such a big question, because the threats tend to come on a legislative basis or a governmental basis. Government loves to get their hands in everything we do, don't they? And try to control us, try to have such significant over-the-top influence. And so, I know a lot of our listeners today aren't in the U.S., but U.S. is trying to the liberal government tries to control us more and more. I mean, that's just it. So whatever that may be, from defining us as an employer of the franchisee's employees, which is absolutely ludicrous, and yet they keep trying to do that. That's a threat to part of franchising, the Zor specifically, and in a way the Z. But I don't think on a global basis the threat to franchising, there's just not anyone that comes to mind. I mean, lending can be frustrating sometimes when financing is tough. or interest rates are high. And yet, when interest rates are high, let's go and use a 401k rollover. At least in the U.S., those are very popular. Or SBA, use some retirement savings. Use HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So one thing I love about franchising that overcomes these obstacles or these threats is when one thing bad is happening, let's say tons of layoffs. Awesome. Franchising is here to help those people get back on their feet by owning their own business. When nobody can find a job, awesome. Franchising is here. When interest rates are low, awesome. Let's get a traditional loan. When they're high, okay, let's use another source. There's always tons of reasons why people want to take control of their life, their livelihood, and achieve their dreams through business ownership. So no big threats at a high level to franchising in any capacity. What was the second part of the question, Harvey?
The second part of the question was misconceptions. I mean,
Sure.
there's perhaps a few, perhaps you could name a common misconception you come across.
Absolutely. Yeah. The number one by far is people just do not understand franchise. They think it's big business. They think franchisors are some giant business, and the local franchisee, which is locally owned and operated independent business owner, they see that entity as a huge billion-dollar conglomerate rather than exactly what it is, which is the passion of a local business owner, a real person, a real family, paying their bills through local ownership. The world does not understand that. Even in the US and Canada, the vast majority of people, you ask them, hey, if you pointed at McDonald's, which is the most popular, most well-known franchise out there, who owns that McDonald's? They're going to say some big, giant billion-dollar company. No, it's a local owned and operated franchisee. So that is the number one, by far, misconception about franchising.
That's great. I think one point that stuck out for me there was the sort of not understanding something, not being educated, and it's why I do this. I want to bring better value, more thought-provoking conversations when people are making those decisions. I think, oh no, you're back. You did freeze. But I tell you what's really interesting as well. So, you said did you say you were a student of the Titus Academy?
Yeah, it's the Titus Center for Franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's a top accredited university. Definitely not an academy.
John coming on actually as a guest, so we're going to touch on that subject, which would be really interesting. But it's great to see someone who's been through that process of a formal education within franchising, right? And I know John has plans, hopefully, to bring something similar here to the UK and in other parts of the world, because what a great thing to do to set people up on their journey in the right way with the best understanding, and it's a good way to get that understanding out in the industry. So
yeah,
we've got a question here from Penny. Penny, one of our lovely sponsors, she's put, often the contents of the operations manual is a good indication of the support the franchisee will receive. It is usual to give potential franchisees sight, subject to NDA, of the ops manual if they go through a second conversation. Red, how do you, you have a few more things in the US with FDDs and franchise value propositions and other documents that perhaps we don't, but how do you see ops manuals and these documents in that process of franchisee recruitment? Are they valuable, or is it more the conversations, getting to know people, or a mixture of the both perhaps?
Yeah, interesting question. The ops manuals play a very small part in most franchise development processes within North America. Certainly if you go to a discovery day in person and you'd like to see the operations manual, if they have a physical version of it, most stores are happy to let you peruse it. But it's, I don't think I've even ever been asked that question. It's just a very minor part of most franchise development processes in North America.
Sure. I think it's asked more here because and I think the point Penny's is trying to make is that here in the UK, when we have more limited access to more formal documents like that, the ops manual is so much more than an ops manual. It's an opportunity to share knowledge, to turn what is the values of an individual into a company culture through the processes put into that. And I think when you're in a a region around the world that's unregulated, to give some consistency and some value, it's worth taking these elements and getting them right here. There's a very cool truck coming past there as well. I'm sure that was the one off the Disney film Cars. It could have been. I mean, it might not have been, but
It's funny. I'm in Texas. We've got a lot of room. This looks like I'm way out in farmland, but 3 blocks that way is a giant freeway, and 4 blocks that way is another giant freeway. So I'm in the almost the middle of Dallas, really.
Excellent. That's good. That's very good. But thanks for your comment, Penny. It's a great point, to take some of these assets that we have as franchisors and see how we use them in that recruitment process and in that knowledge sharing process that we have at that beginning stage. So thanks very much for your question. Let's have a look here what Joe's put. Joe's put, Red, what are your thoughts on the proposed California franchise broker disclosure law working its way through the legislative process? I mean, this is one very much obviously for a local region, but I mean, have you any initial thoughts on how legislation, perhaps it goes back to that threat to the industry, is legislation, does it help or is it a hindrance?
Well, certainly there's good legislation and bad legislation. California is possibly the most liberal state in the country, and it's the United Soviet Socialist Republic of California, oftentimes we call them. I actually have a shirt that I wear around my neighborhood because so many Californians are moving to Texas. It says, "Don't California my Texas." So we have a love and a hate relationship with that wonderful state. It is a gorgeous state with wonderful people, and but they're quite foolish. Their economy in their legislative processes. Now, people who are in favor of what's going on over there will simply use the wonderful term transparency. Who can argue with transparency? Oh my gosh, that's the most wonderful word in the world. I love me some transparency. Who doesn't love transparency? So use that word all day long. But what does that mean? Whoever's pitching that, let's say, okay, what's your income? Oh, that you're not interested in transparency now, are you? So they want transparency as long as it's not about them. Now, there's certainly they also like to claim that franchise consultants that refer brands are salespeople. We are not selling an opportunity. We don't do a single step in the franchise discovery process. Think about that. That's a very common misconception for some emerging brands or new people to the industry might think. Franchise referral consultants or brokers do not do a single step in the franchise discovery process, nor do they replace anyone on the franchise development team. Okay, if they don't do any of the steps in the process and they don't replace a franchise development person, what do? They are the highest quality sources for candidates. They are a matchmaker, they are an educator, they're a handholder, they're an introducer, but they are in no way a franchise development salesperson. And so it's a long answer. I get a little animated with it. It's just frustrating to see again and again and again something that's working wonderfully and has no legitimate or even moderately widespread issues get they want to change things, and I just don't get it. Things are working wonderfully, lives are being changed, communities are being impacted, trillions of dollars are being created into the economy, and yet we want to fix something that's not broken. So yeah, I'm not a fan.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I think it was a really interesting description as well of the brokers, because I wanted to touch on the process actually that you use as a broker, and you mentioned there that it's high quality lead generation, finding partners that are well aligned, and doing that very beginning process. Me as a franchisor, certainly when you use traditional sort of advertising that brings in a mountain of leads, it's a matter of trying to sort of sift through as to who might be your actual business partners. I use this actually a lot. This show allows people to get to know me and who I am, and I'm a very similar character today as you would if you met me, same as you. And that certainly it does have value, because people can start to get to know someone first before you start to qualifying it. I mean, the show that I'm going to be doing with Simon, which is Franchising Brand Stories, coming on Thursday, that's going to be just about that. We're going to take a brand, let them tell their story, so that potential franchisees can look at that and start to think about, am I aligned? Is that really where I want to go? By hearing it from the founder, something like that, you really do get a great understanding of that business. Yeah, what's the process if somebody wanted to involve a broker to get their leads, from where you begin to handing someone that qualified lead? What does that look like?
So a franchisor is looking to work with a consulting group.
Yeah.
So the different groups are a little bit different in how they approach it. We have a moderate level of vetting of the opportunity. So we'll take that franchisor, we'll require them to sign an agreement. Of course, it's not exclusive in any way, but an agreement that says they'll pay the consultant for successful referral. They'll operate with integrity, and then we look at their FTD. We look at their FTD and see, what does their attrition look like? What are their litigation, very important section, and then look at their financials. If they've got those three in line, we welcome them with open arms. We believe in capitalism. We believe in letting the market decide, and we also trust our consultants to do their due diligence in researching the franchisors as well. We provide them a lot of that due diligence and information, but it's a partnership with our consultants in identifying the best opportunities for their candidates. So it's a very simple process, Harvey. They go to ifpg.org and they can submit a form right there. Membership at ifpg.org is a simple way to email us, membership@ifpg.org. And our membership director will talk to them, give them clarity on what it looks like. Now, if they say, yes, I want to work with consultants, okay, great. Sign the agreement, credit card form, give us the FDD, and then lastly is the input sheet. 4 things, simple things: FDD, agreement, credit card, and input sheet. Input sheet gives us everything a consultant could need to know about a brand to be able to match appropriately and present at a high level. So we're going to ask, how many units? When did you start? When did you start franchising? Give us any videos you have. Give us any downloads you have. Let's talk about your ideal candidate profile, that ideal avatar. What's a day in a life look like for a franchise candidate? What's the all-in investment range, what we call item 7? Do you have an item 19? If so, what does it look like? Give us a high level on the item 19. Ramp up process, training, and all that's included in training. So I'm just spitting this off, but as you can see, it's a pretty thorough analysis of the opportunity, which then allows the consultant to match appropriately, learn about the brand, and introduce that brand to the candidate. Once if you think about it, we've got 650 some odd brands. The consultant goes through the science of the process, which is getting facts from the candidate, entering the facts in our system. The system narrows it to 50 or 150. It narrows it a little, but you got a long way to go. Then the art of the process kicks in, where the consultant is evaluating opportunities quickly, narrowing it down to maybe 30, maybe 70. They're narrowing it down, doing a territory check. It's a couple clicks of a couple buttons, and they're checking to see if the opportunity is available in the area the candidate is interested in, and then narrows it down further and further, watches the videos, looks at every piece of the process, narrows it down to somewhere between 6 and 12 opportunities, presents those opportunities to the candidate or candidates, usually husband and wife, and then ultimately with the husband and wife or the candidate's assistants, narrows it down to the final 3. Typically, final 3 actually get introduced or registered with the franchisor. Now, in that process, whether it's 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months, usually it's around 1 to 2 weeks, the consultant has been leading that process. Consultant has been in charge, driving the car, if you will. Now that the registration occurs and 2 to 4, typically 3 brands are actually introduced 2 ways with the candidate and the ZOR, and the ZOR and the candidate. Now the consultant really takes a back seat to the process. They've been driving, they get out of that car, the ZOR or each of those 3 ZORs now take that candidate through their process to discover if it's the right opportunity. The consultant is still involved. The consultant is still checking in after each conversation with the ZOR, after each and checking in with the candidate. They're fricking and fracking, as we call it in the industry. It's a term that we use to talk about how the third party, the consultant, is communicating with each party and giving insights that maybe each party wouldn't give. For instance, hey, franchisor, you're in second place. They're looking at XYZ, who's in first place, and ABC, which is in third place. Here's why you're in second. They didn't feel like you answered this question appropriately or clearly. And so you're getting information and insights from that consultant that you wouldn't have got otherwise. The candidate's moving forward with financing while the process is occurring, typically, because the consultant has set them up with the lending sources. So that consultant is now in the backseat helping the process, massaging it, hand-holding, preparing the candidate for the next steps, validating that the steps are appropriate, and ultimately helping that franchisor get them over the line, which is a very scary line. If you think about it, this is one of the biggest decisions in someone's life. It's bigger than buying a house, not necessarily financially, but what you do every day, your livelihood to pay for a house, is that franchise. And so it's an enormous decision. Why would anyone do it without an advisor to help guide them through it? So sorry for the long answer, but again, I get passionate about why we help so many lives and why we're so critical to the process to get the right franchise for a lot of candidates and for those ZORs.
That's fantastic. And please don't apologize. That was an amazing answer to that question and really valuable. And this show is all about adding value. And your answer to that question and what you've just said there would add value to anyone looking to make that decision. So thank you very much. We are starting.
Hey, and you know what, Harvey, I'll give you one more tidbit there. So when I was a franchise development rep with a global brand, in fact, a brand that you know well in the UK, expense reduction analyst, I had in 2017, I was on 3 franchise portals. Great portals, very popular, the most popular franchise websites in the world, advertising my opportunity. I was paying $50 per lead on average. I was getting on average 100 leads a month. In a year, 2017, that's 1,200 leads. That's 60,000 US dollars. And good old Red, that thought he was the greatest franchise development rep ever and had a brand with 700 units in 35 countries with good validation and a low investment, I awarded 1 franchise, 1 out of 1,200. And I don't even mind the $660,000 as much as I'm frustrated by the 60 billion hours I spent following up with these leads who had no money, thought they applied for a job and couldn't speak English. While at the same time, I was getting leads from consultants or brokers, and I was awarding 1 out of 8 to 1 out of 10. It was a much more positive process. I enjoyed it. They liked me. They respected me. I had been teed up properly. They closed faster. They were more successful ongoing. So it was just a whole 180-degree world from the traditional leads that I'd been getting.
That's amazing. I've got some experience of that in terms of that conversion rate. And you just spend so much time filtering down, trying to find out who is aligned, going from 200 to 1 or 100 to 1, even if it is that rather than 1,200, it just takes a fair bit of time to do it. And we are starting. I know you've got to get going fairly soon. We are starting to draw to a conclusion now. If you've got any final thoughts, are you going to be all right to continue talking, Red?
Let's do it. I just hope it's not too loud.
Okay.
Well, and I apologize for having to drive. I have to get to the airport for the multi-unit franchise conference.
It's no problem at all. What I might say, actually, because I think we're going to draw this one to a conclusion to help you out, Red, on your journey. But we've got 2 or 3 more questions that have come in. Red, if it would be okay, would you mind taking a bit of time when you're free to just go back through the questions and give your thoughts on them afterwards?
I'd be honored to, Harvey, of course.
That would be great. So if we had a few questions, we had one from Kitten, which was which industry or sector had the biggest impact or success. If you could go back and have a look at that one. We've got one from Johnny that said, please discuss how the franchisee-franchisor relationship is codependent, which I think is a great question. And finally, we had a question here from Joe, and Johnny Joseph. That's a good question. In my opinion, it is the franchisee-franchisor relationship more of independent relationship, because They have distinctly different roles. What I was going to... Are you okay there, Red?
I'm great. I just hope I'm not too loud for you.
It's not a problem. Look, Red, I think what we're going to do, we're going to conclude things now. You've been amazing. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. I want to thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank everybody who's been here today. As ever, your comments, your questions, your input really do drive the show and content of what we're doing. So it's an absolute honor to have you all here. I'm so interested to hear what you will say. It's always a real learning for me. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. I just wanted, before Red gives some final thoughts, in fact, no, let's just quickly turn it over to Red. Red, could you just give some final thoughts, let people know the best way to get hold of you, and anything else you want to say about what you're currently doing?
Sure, brother. Well, thank you. Honored to be here, guys. Sorry for the background noise. The daylight savings time over here got the best of us, and we were an hour off. So going to the multi-unit franchise conference in Vegas, going to see about 2,000 of my best friends in franchising. Lots going on. This is the greatest industry in the world. We have such a positive impact on folks. If you'd like to become a consultant, hey, we are always, my internal mantra at IFPG that they hear me say every day practically is, if we have the best consultants, we win. And we are winning time and time again, having been voted #1 in the world 5 years in a row with Entrepreneur Magazine. So we're looking to expand more and more internationally. We believe that the sky's the limit on that. And so membership at ifpg.org is the best way to get hold of me and Hira, our membership director. You can watch we'll show you lots of videos, lots of information on what we do, how we do it, the investment. If you're a franchisor, if you're a supplier to the industry, or you're somebody interested in being a consultant, we welcome the conversation, and we'll certainly honor you with the process and take your time on it. We'll get you every bit of clarity and figure out if it's the right fit for you. So, Harvey, you ruled, my brother. Thanks for spreading the gospel of franchising. Excited to change lives with you in the future, my friend.
Thanks very much, Red. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and safe travels to you.
Thanks.
Everybody, just very quickly, just want to say, so we will be back next week as ever with the wonderful Ben Baker, and we'll be talking about communication, I think is the episode title. Also check out on Thursday, it's the launch of our brand new show, Franchising Brand Stories. We're going to have the wonderful Amrit from Wallfinch talking all about his story, and it's going to be a really fascinating one. So join us Thursday, 5:15 GMT. I think it's 11:15 Eastern Daylight Savings Time, but check that one. And as ever, we're back next Tuesday, so join us then at the same time, 5:15 GMT. I want to thank you all again for being here. It's always a pleasure, and I will see you next week. Take good care.